大家下午好。我们开始这个今天下午的最后一个 panel， 就是未来的人类，未来的我们，这会是一个非常激动人心的一个论坛啊。我们请到了非常重量级的这个关于这个 VR 的这个专家首先我们所以欢迎派拉蒙影视的未来学家Sean Horowitz, please come to the stage. Sean, please. 他是那个 Magic Leap 那个创意总监啊，这个Magic Leap 也是就是现在 VR 界就是非常神秘，但是非常就是说面向未来的这样的一个公司。然后下一位请那个未来管理局的局长姬少婷女士。未来管理局是一个非常神秘的机构啊，听上去非常科幻。那他们做的工作也是非常的这个科幻啊。下面是孙薇女士啊，你是这个超人类计划是吧？用这个中国区的创始人，这个也是一个非常未来的面向未来的一个组织啊，就是我们人类将会变成怎样好，So welcome all the panelists, and we are really very happy to hear how Ted and Sean gave us talk yesterday and this morning about the media development and also the history of storytelling and how all this is changing along with each other. So we really like you to talk more, continue what you stopped the last time, and could elaborate and give us more glimpse of the future, how this future will be impacted by immersive storytelling or VR. Could we start more from? Could you start from Ted, and you talk about how we developed from mobile phone to the headset. Lastly, you described something Sean's company is developing, or in that direction. That's something like eyewear. So we can imagine someday in the future we will be, instead of looking at a mobile phone or the clumsy headset, we will be just wearing some eyeglasses or even smaller as eye contact lens. What will be the society or mankind, humanity will become in such a near future society?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic of discussion, right? We were actually talking in the little prep room before with another group about there's a fairly robust scientific discussion about are we as humans already living in some sort of simulation versus what we perceive as reality. Like we perceive this chair is real, we perceive this screen is here, we perceive this hotel, we perceive it. As humans, our brains tell us it's real, right? We can touch it, we can smell it, we can feel it. But there's a fairly good amount of science with some degree of efficacy that tells us that statistically, we are more likely to be living in some sort of simulation dynamic that is created by another more advanced culture, and we are their animals. We are their lab experiment. And you know, if you have sort of an open mind and you kind of think about that as we've evolved and what happens on this strange little planet versus the known universe, and we've yet to discover another known universe, even though we think it's out there. Statistically, we believe there's another culture like ours, another science, another humanity, a biology like ours. We've yet to find it. And therefore, there may be an alternate reality that is settling in. And it's an interesting thing to explore, right? So that's an interesting starting point for an interesting discussion about the future is what are we really living in already, right? And then when you sort of now bring it down to earth, bring it down to our version of reality, whether it's real or not, the tool sets that we use and the evolution of compute, we've become a society of compute. And the stages and the advancements of that are heading towards this potential outcome that Ray Kurzweil has been documenting for many years of his career, that is referred to as the singularity, which is when compute and biology start to mesh together and we start to turn into something that is different than the biology that we're on now. And one of my postulations, because we're all, I guarantee you, doing it, and every one of the audience is doing it, we have this very powerful computer that is essentially like embedded to our body. Like it's touching our body all the time. And we're using it, and we're constantly pulling it out, we're constantly doing this with it, and we're constantly holding it. So you can very, very logically and cleanly track that to the next evolution of compute, which is when the device gets light enough, nimble enough, and appropriate enough to wear it rather than hold it, we're likely going to wear it. And that's why there's so much economic force, creative force, cultural force being put into this next evolution of wearable compute. I don't need to physically hold the device anymore. I've made it so light and so powerful that I can just put it where my brain connects to the outside world, which is my eyes, my ears, and my nose, right? That's right, it's all up here. It's not here, it's not here, it's here. So why don't I get it here? And that's kind of the power, that's this like power accelerator. So if you look at VR as an industry, VR is kind of a rounding error. It's not really that important economically, and it'll never really be that important economically in its current form. But when we get visual, audio, and olfactory compute where our brains are and the device that connects our brains to the world in the right spot, that's a massive force multiplier. That's probably in the multi-trillions of, call it GDP, worldwide GDP. And VR will be this tiny little pimple on that. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's an interesting start of the discussion.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. You look at this future as liberating, as opening up the potentials of humanity. But liberation means something for other people, especially we also have this knowledge of the complex meaning of liberation. So it could also mean slavery. What do you
Yeah, well,
see?
and look, all the big tech companies, all these giants of industry, Chinese, European, American, doesn't matter, the smart companies all have ethics scientists and ethical studiers that are looking at the ethics of technology and what we're doing to ourselves. And clearly, you know, in the news, like a current, very topical discussion is the dynamic of what Facebook has been doing in terms of compute genetic engineering, of like trying to make it stickier, make us pay attention, force us down these negative rabbit holes because it's more attention getting, and therefore they can generate more revenue. And we know that Google is doing it too, and we know that you know, I'm sure big Chinese media companies like Baidu are probably doing it as well. So we know this, right? This is not like just some guess that it might be happening. We have quite provable data that we know these companies are doing it for profit. So they're trading on our human capital, right? They're using us as product, and they're benefiting from that massively. So it's interesting that you're starting to backlash against that. This is anti-Facebook movements. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, there are similar cries in China, especially as regards the game industry. You know, game opens up completely new horizon for entertainment, but it also opens the doors of addiction, and the big enterprises could make use of this human weakness, and especially this addiction as a means of profiting. So. And we can see VR would be the super form of game. So this problem, addiction, should be more like opium. You see, we also have traumatic memory of opium as Chinese. So I'd like to ask Ted, what do you think of this problem from a more scientific? Oh, sorry, Sean. Sean.
In the future, I will be Ted. Whenever
We are all holographic.
Maybe each other right now.
That's right.
Yeah. And especially as I'd wish to see this from you used to be, and still now is a very famous science fiction writer. Could you
Slightly famous. Very small famous.
So could you shed some light into a big picture of human history, where we are and where we are going from the reference of science fiction?
Well, the big picture. Okay, here's one way of saying it. There have been exactly 5 stages of storytelling in the history of humanity. Stories around a campfire, theater, where basically you have multiple storytellers, the printing press, books, printed material, and cinema, which is, the printing press makes stories scalable so that you can make the same story for many people. Cinema makes theater scalable so you can have theater for many people. We're at number 5, digital types of storytelling. And in the entire history of the world, this is one of the only moments where we get a chance to invent storytelling again. And for anyone who's in the room and anyone who's interested in this, it's really worth taking a moment to think about how incredibly lucky we are to be in one of the 30-year gaps where one of 5 things that's ever happened in the history of storytelling is happening. So, I think we should be super grateful about that. One last point, and then I'll pass over to these guys, about what you were saying about Facebook and the way that, or we're going to come back to variable ratio reinforcement schedules, as I mentioned earlier. My daughter made a very interesting point to me. She is a creature of this age of the world in a way I am not. I was born before handheld computers were a thing. I was born before cell phones and YouTube and all those things. My daughter grows up in this world. And I was talking to someone very optimistically, because I am an optimistic person, saying, I really think that one of the great values of the internet and social media is that we get a chance to connect with so many people that we otherwise wouldn't meet. I mean, all of us on WeChat now, right? I'm now suddenly friends with many Chinese people that I did not know a few days ago. And my daughter said, no. You never meet new people on social media. Social media is determined by a series of algorithms. Its only desire is to make you come back. Social media is going to show you on Facebook or any equivalent what it is you want to see. And what it is you want to see, the most fascinating thing for a human being is always themselves. So what she said is, you think it's a party, but it's actually a mirror. Yeah. Social media is always you looking out into the world, thinking you're looking at someone else, but actually only seeing yourself slightly off skew, which I thought was a very smart comment.
Yeah. I completely agree.
Well, and to that point, just briefly, when you talk about that mirror, we are now lacing that with narrative, right? So we use these text strings and these group chats as a storyline to our mirror, and it helps us. It's a power of, like, the power of story connected to the most baseline human connectivity of, I want to know how I play in that story, is why it's so powerful. It's so interesting.
And as a writer, my response to that is, How about let these people speak?
Maybe we can just elaborate more a bit when you mentioned how this mirror or the subjectivity, we use the net as a self-confirmation. And so what I can see this can be closely linked to your speech this morning when you talk about how the stories is becoming more and more interactive, that is immersive. So the shift has changed from the writer to the reader. The reader is becoming the author. So what do you think this has impact to the future storytelling or even art form, this collectivity of writing, this populist horizon? Yeah.
So very quickly, the thesis was that increasingly, we're making works of art which involve the audience as participants, and they increasingly get to have some influence, some sway over the material. A thing I mentioned this morning, if anyone was there, is that there are on one fan fiction site more stories about Harry Potter by many, many fans than there are words in the first 5 Harry Potter novels. In an important sense, Harry Potter has become a landscape that is mostly populated by people whose names you don't know or remember. It is a giant amount of art that's being built. Anthill sounds too reductive, but it's being built by many, many people, none of whom need to be or expect to be a star in the same way, the old idea of art, but all of whom are working together and in a constant conversation. I don't think that will ever completely replace single author things, but I do think increasingly there will be more and more art that is consumed that is made by us collectively rather than made by me, Sean Stewart. We're going to try to, I think it will naturally come that it dissolves out where more and more is made by the collective. This seems like an excellent chance again to say, I'd love to hear what these people have to say.
Great, great. 好，那我们现在转向那个我们的小鸡局长啊，我们这个同胞啊，那个就是因为季少廷女士局长should I translate?
工作人员可以给一个那个耳机给他们吗？
给一个耳机，请给一个耳机。Yeah. Okay.
Just on the side, this is interesting, right? Because we're actually living the science fiction in this moment right now.
Yeah.
We're about to have a conversation where 2 people speaking different languages talk about the future and use technology and helpfulness collectively to make us all understand one another, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool because in the past we can only tell the story in one language. But now it's like a campfire here, and we are the Asian people around it, and we talk in 2 different languages, and we can still communicate. Yeah. Maybe in the future we can communicate without words.
We do a lot. Well, you know, emoji culture is an interesting.
Yeah.
Like there are people that have now really built entire language skills around emoji.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of like visual sign language.
Yeah.
And it's
And
quite
some
sophisticated.
people rewrote Shakespeare's Hamlet with an emoji.
That's
awesome. So we will see a visual culture to its extreme, and that's closely related to the immersive storytelling. 那所以小鸡，那个你跟我们讲讲你的心目当中的这个未来，然后这个未来呢，跟这个 VR 啊和这个沉浸式叙事。你觉得是一个什么样的一个关系？然后这个未来呢，是一个令人乐观的，还是一个就是看上去很可怕的，就像《黑客帝国》那样子的一个反乌托邦的一个未来？那
我自己其实会是一个比较乐观的人。我想象当中的未来会跟 VR 比较有关系的一个重要的未来是说，我就发现现在的人类在接收信息方面就会非常的快速。在过去我们可能围着一个篝火聊天的时候，那个时候讲故事的速度是非常非常慢的。但是现在呢，有新生代的人类，他们已经可以一边看电影一边看大量的字幕，就是这个信息的接收量已经超出了我的能力范围。但是对很多小朋友来说，他毫无困难。所以我相信，就是说我现在可能比我的爷爷奶奶接收信息的速度要快非常非常多。那现在新生代的小朋友，他从几岁开始就会读文字开始，他接收的信息量就远远大于我。那我相信未来的人类，他在单位时间内，在有生之年接收的信息量会远远大于现在的人类。也就是说，在未来人类的发展方向上，一定是会在接收信息的速度上会越来越快。那接收信息的方法有很多，现在我们接收信息的方法是通过眼睛、耳朵。那未来这种沉浸式的这种体验方式，会给我们更多的体验方式，就包括有味觉、触觉、 各种不同的体验，同时全部都可以体验到，以及在更遥远的未来，就是在脑中植入芯片的时候 ，implant the chips in my brain。在将来植入芯片的时候，那我可能接收信息的速度是更快的，有可能我们几个之间不需要聊天，然后就可能严老师发我一个压缩包，我知道严老师要说什么，哎，我丢给他的一个压缩包，然后有全部巨大的信息量，然后几个电影那么大的信息量，我在一瞬间就给你了。那这个时候我们交流的速度也会变得飞快。这个时候，人可能那个时候确实已经变得跟今天是完全不同的。以及说我其实并不相信 AI 会真的统治人类。因为我始终认为 AI 是我们人类生命当中的一个他者 ，AI could be the other different form of life， 就是这个他者的意义就是它跟人类是完全不一样的。我们现在是在以己夺人，我们人类认为 AI 是有兴趣统治我们的，其实我认为 AI 完全没有兴趣统治我们，它的兴趣点，它想要的东西。这个 AI 诞生之后，它的快速发展之后，不断迭代之后，为什么还要统治人类呢？这是一个毫无意义的选项，所以它一定会去做一些其他的事情，甚至是我今天我作为一个渺小的人类，一个接收信息量，我们聊了这么半天，可能也没有几个比特的信息量的这样的一个生命状态下，我怎么去思考 AI 将来是不是要统治我呢？所以我认为未来我们人类是不会被 AI 统治的，但是人和这个机器的结合可能是一个比较必然的方向。对，因为这个其实跟我所想象的这种快速接收信息的方向是非常契合的。所以未来不管是在植入芯片啊，还是增强外骨骼啊，这种我们未来人类走向赛博格这个方向，我觉得是一个必然的方向。
这个小鸡局长，这个对未来好像还是比较乐观的，
特别乐观。对，
我给大家透露一下，这个小鸡局长的这个网名就是叫 AI， 小鸡，所以我们有一点怀疑，是吧？就是小鸡到底是人类还是 AI？ 因为我们经常觉得它太聪明啊，这个又太智慧，然后有一点不太像人类啊，所以
那我也有可能是，
所以他这样在为 AI 说话，我们也是可以理解的，是吧？他好像不是站在人类的立场上。刚才他说的开玩笑，但是就是说，你刚才讲到一个，就速度越来越快。这个速度越来越快，会不会也会有一些问题？因为我们原来这个慢的速度啊，实际上是一个着重于过程的一个文化。那么，包括我们的学习过程的漫长，我们抚养一个孩子的过程的漫长，包括我们求爱的过程的一个困难和漫长，都是让我们人类成为人类的一个非常重要的一个进化手段。那么现在我们突然来了一个，就是所有的一切都能够当下的满足。你需要什么样的生活，什么样的影像，甚至什么样的爱人，什么样的知识都能够当场实现。那这个会对这个人类文化会不会产生一些灾难性的影响？
我觉得严老师这个问题特别的严肃，并且有价值。就是我想象当中，可能到了那个时候，我们对快和慢，因为它毕竟是个相对概念，就是对快和慢的概念可能会理解会不太一样。比如说过去可能在我父母那个年代，他们等待对方给他回信，可能等了1个星期，等了1个月。那个时候他觉得时间漫长，我在这个过程当中我很煎熬，我在祈祷对方是不是会更爱我，然后会怎样。那现在你可能等对方给你回微信，等了2分钟。然后你觉得时间好漫长啊，对方到底是怎么想的啊？到底喜不喜欢我？为什么2分钟还没有给我回消息？这2分钟度日如年，度秒如年，所以，对，所以可能对时间的感知完全不同。所以对于未来的人类来说，他可能丢了一个几兆压缩包给你，然后你可能在0.5秒之内还没有回消息，他觉得哇太漫长了，你怎么还没有理我？怎么那么久过去了？对，我觉得其实对于当下的概念会不太一样。比如说我们过去所认为的当下是说今年之内可能会发生什么事，明年会发生什么事。现在在这个互联网快速发展的今天，我们可能会觉得今天还没有发生的事，明天要发生就已经不算当下了。 就觉得明年还要发生的事啊，那你现在不要问我，明年的日程还没有安排好。对，所以我觉得如果信息可以快速传输的话，我觉得时间会被更高效的利用。人的生命会相对来说就已经被延长了，我觉得可能是个好事情。
谢谢小吉局长，这个你给我很大的安慰。其实我是一个特别容易担忧的人，所以我带着许多的担忧来，但是这个担忧呢，就给这个 Ted、Sean， 然后这个小鸡就慢慢的化解，所以我非常感谢我能参加这一次会。好，那我们现在把问题交给就是孙薇女士，就是我觉得你也是特别这个代表了一个非常有意思的方向，就是我们人类的下一个阶段啊，就是你的这个就是 Humanity Plus 是吧？实际上是不是可以视为一个人类2.0啊？就是所谓的 Transhumanism 或者 Post-Human。那么这个就是我觉得是我们就是真的非常关心的，我们会成为什么样的人类？那么就是我们可不可以就是从今天这个会的这样的一个角度，你给我们描述一下这个未来的人类啊
I think we're more like Life 3.0 because the 1.0 is more like, the revolutionary process of the animals and species, and 2.0 is more like the relationship with you and your cell phone, right? It's more like a hybrid kind of a human-machine, interactions. And 3.0 is more like, maybe you're on a process to cyber when the machine is part of you, or even like when you're enhanced by the emerging technologies. So that's much more powerful than the first stage and the second. Yeah, and but I'm optimist disguised in realist. So I like to think about the future as like what do we want the future to be? So like echo back to Xiaoji was saying, there's a saying that there's no language. The language will be distinct in the future because there will be mind-reading technologies somehow. So when she was, giving this data package to another person, maybe she can transfer the emotions and empathetically, the others can know that instantly about how she feels. So that, I think, enhances the human experience in a very great way, yeah.
1 second.
Yes.
I think you just said in the future I won't have a job. Because my entire job is to create little packages of human emotion and move them from one person to another. Like, that's my whole gig.
No, it will be constantly modified.
I agree.
Yeah. So it will be like...
So I have an interesting thought against what you were saying and what you were saying, and see if you agree or disagree. So your comment about the long-term effects of AI and that it probably won't be as strong or debilitating that some people predict. I think we're in
I just think AI will be too strong and they have no interest to slave us.
You think
The matrix won't happen because the AI is too strong to have an interest to slave human beings because AI is so different from us.
it'll be too smart?
Yeah, too smart.
It's the culture.
Yeah.
It's omnipotent like God,
Yeah,
so
it won't care about us.
Yeah, they won't care about
We will
us.
be like the gerbils that
Yeah, yeah.
raised them once
Well,
and they're
okay,
fine.
We're
so
just
that's-
like
you're
ants
right.
to them. Yes.
So what's interesting to me is I think that the breadcrumbs from that are actually already happening. And this is some stuff that I was talking about yesterday, is that our actual brain chemistry is changing. We are not using certain parts of our brains that our parents and grandparents used because we don't need to anymore, because we have a pocket brain that we carry with us. So we don't have to remember as many things. We don't have to associate those things with where do I get that knowledge, because the knowledge is always with us. And the most telling signs of all this is the internal navigation part of our brain is literally going away. It is shrinking and disappearing because the compute navigation systems are so good and so effective now that we don't have to remember how to get places anymore. We don't care because I have Google Maps and I can just map it. And if I'm in a car, even if I'm walking, like if I'm in a big city like San Francisco and I need to get to the Mission and I'm on a 2-mile walk, a generation ago, I would need to know how to do that. My brain would have to know, or else I could get in trouble and die, right? Now, I don't have to get in trouble and die because I have an extra brain. So the brain chemistry is actually altering, and that's, to me, that's AI, right? You're talking about machine learning and computer technology and artificial intelligence that's replacing our own intelligence. And that is a really interesting subject matter and a fodder for writing and storytelling, and it's really interesting.
I agree with absolutely everything except your conclusion.
That's good.
So my wife is a neuroscientist, so we've actually had this conversation about spatial locations, because it used to be a thing that we spent a whole lot of time doing, like how do I find my way from here to there? It was a survival necessity. And in fact, you can find those regions of the brain, and the activity in the brain are enhanced in, 20 years ago, they did studies with cab drivers. Like, you could find London cabbies or cab drivers in Beijing or Shanghai or Tokyo, and they would actually have more activity and a bigger part of their brain devoted for this. Who's okay with not spending 15% of their brain's resources remembering how to
okay
get,
with it.
Like, I feel like I got better things to do with that. Like, I don't think it's going to, I don't think we're going to, our brains will atrophy and shrink. They're just going to be doing different things. That capacity may be lost. There's a, I don't know how many people have ever read the book Guns, Germs, and Steel, but it opens with a guy who's a professor at UCLA who did a lot of field work in Papua New Guinea with primitive peoples. And one of them said to him at one point, "How come your people got all the cargo and my people got none? Why do you have all the stuff?" And he stopped and he thought, it's true. These people in Papua New Guinea are way smarter than my students at UCLA. Why don't they have any stuff? And part of what he was recognizing is the people in Papua New Guinea were alert because they had to be all the time. They had to be thinking, they had to be finding their way. They lived with no margin, so they were engaged and vigilant in their lives all the time compared to his students at UCLA who just had better things to do than pay attention in his class. It might be that if their love lives depended on the marks they got in his class, you would have found that they were plenty attentive. So I think that we will find things to do with that unused space. But you're right, it'll be different.
I guess my argument is the potential dystopian dynamic of this is if humans start to give up, right? We sort of allow computers to take over all of these functions, and therefore we atrophy. We don't actually use, it's a slightly different theory on the same like end conclusion, right? Is what if we allow computers to essentially take over our humanity? And that's essentially what has been happening in the current state of technology. We've blended it so much that at some point, what if we just like, the computers can handle it, it's fine.
But haven't we just changed what our humanity means? Like, to take a controversial example, if you do sort of standard intelligence testing, this generation of adolescents is just smarter. And part of the reason they're smarter is they play a ton of games. They play video games. Playing video games makes you smarter. This would drive my grandparents crazy. It's just a thing. This generation of 17-year-old men reads 3 times as much as the generation before it. It's all inside video games. It's never books. But they read more, and they do more complicated processing with what they read. Long story short, I'm not sure that we're giving up our humanity. I think we may just be turning our humanity's focus to a different set of tasks.
Yeah, we used to argue that music was that, right? If you were a musician, you were learning and stimulating, and musicians tend to become very advanced mathematicians because music and math are very connected, right? So we've, in some ways, replaced that skill base with advanced video gaming, which is in some ways like music, because you have to react within that space of time as things are happening. And in the video game, you get killed, and in the music world, you miss your note. You're not in sync. But it's actually the same kind of brain chemistry that does it. So you're absolutely right that a video game culture, and I was an early stage video game. I was an arcade rat. I played, Galaga. I could do 45 levels on Galaga with 1 quarter. So I was the king of that arcade, right? Now, but today, I'm a complete Luddite when I try and play Call of Duty or Fortnite because these kids will crush me on Fortnite because their math is better. They have way more cycles in. They know how to do it way better than me, right? And it's an interesting sort of telling discussion around society and whatnot. I think it's interesting.
I'm so interested in the part that you said that we quit some of those parts of our brain and develop other things. So I have a question for everyone, including Yanfeng 老师. And so if you can quit some of the parts your brain using now, so which part you will quit it and won't miss it a lot? So
Yeah, we don't have to hunt anymore for food,
yes.
right? we sort of do. We have to go find food somehow, but it's much easier. And we don't have to dedicate the sort of prefrontal cortex of like, that's an animal, it's either going to kill me or I'm going to kill it. And if I don't kill it, I'm going to die because I need to eat it, right? So the brain chemistry evolves, right?
So you will quit hunting. So what about you?
I'll tell a story slightly sideways because why be direct and to the point if you don't have to be? On the first big project I worked with a guy who's 10 years younger than me. And I am like the last person from a previous generation before all of you, and he was like the first person of the next. And at one point, we happened to be doing something involving the Second World War, and he asked me if I knew what an Enigma machine was. And I said, of course I know what an Enigma machine was. And I gave him a little speech about who Alan Turing was, and that the Nazis had made this code, and there was a base of computing. You have to understand that he was a hacker. So I'd already had the conversation where I was explaining to him who Alan Turing was. And so I prosed on very pompously for 10 minutes, at the end of which my friend Ilan said, "That's amazing, that's super cool. Did you know there's a simulator at Berkeley and I can work it?" I was like, oh, I'm the last generation of people who knew things. He's the first generation of people who they're just-in-time information. They don't need to know things as long as things are known and they know how to get them. And I think that's something, like, I never get over the fact that I have the sum of all human knowledge in my pocket. Hey, what was the main thing that came back from the Crusades? You'll look in your pocket.
You can find it. Yeah,
It'll
easy
be,
to find it.
It turns out it's apricots, by the way.
It's like a new hunting, because they're hunting for knowledge.
That's so good. That's exactly what I was thinking when he was talking, and you got to the punchline. Because yes, I think they actually are hunters. I think we were the agriculturalists. We used to grow little crops of knowledge and put them in our barn. The generation below me doesn't need crops of knowledge. As long as someone knows it, that's good enough. As long as somewhere in the blockchain, someone has that piece of information, and I have the key to go get it and come back when I need it, I'm good.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting. The combination, the mixture of your two answers solves exactly my question as from Xiaoji. And when Ted says when you are playing a Garga and to Call of Duty, I was thinking that is this some sort of return to the primitive way of life when kids are addicted to gaming? That's a jungle mentality, search and destroy, and the full alertness to all the dangers looming in the forest. Yeah. But that's not the modern way of life. We are in a safe house, completely keep away from the dangers. How should we do this primitive practice?
Well, we want the endorphin rush, right?
Yeah.
The kids clearly want it. There's economics behind it. There's time spent. They're looking for the kick, for the rush. The shooting mechanic, the mechanic of actually doing that stimulates part of that lizard brain that's very hard to beat.
I'm still this animal.
Still the animal. We are the animals. We are the animals.
Evolution spent 3 million years making me into a thing that scavenges and hunts.
Yeah.
And I still want to scavenge and hunt, but it turns out that we have agreed in a broader sense, maybe I shouldn't scavenge and hunt, you. Right. So.
But I'll do it with a digital version.
It digitally, right? Like, can't we all just say publicly that anything that keeps 19-year-old men quiet somewhere away from other people is excellent. Like, isn't that just a good thing?
Yeah. And I completely agree with Sean's point that we are searching and destroying knowledge, not the animals or some lion or tigers out there. And I think this is a combination of our basic human instinct and advancement of technology, the combination of the two. So,
I think building on that, all the emotions, we have so many anxiety and stress nowadays. And that's like the byproduct of revolutionary process, right? So how do we, if we don't want to go like for survival, like a hunting or whatever, we're doing like sitting in the office, but we still have these emotions of stress. That gives us a threat for life threat. I think we eventually will develop more higher threshold for stress or anxiety, so we can endorse more. And using our brains differently, so we're using more prefrontal cortex more for that analytical and reasoning, but the emotions, we can just go through that by training the mind and stuff.
It's why we're so accepting now culturally in a technology world of these simulation universes. Why? What I was making the point of before, that VR is going to be a very small part of this overall picture, but the core tenets of virtual reality, the simulation dynamics, are going to be a very important part of, and a massive economic driver and cultural driver. The idea that we are theme parking our lives and our worlds, and we will begin to drop into more and more simulation dynamics on a daily basis. We do that now by using screens, right? So we surround ourselves with screens from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. Your laptop, your phone, your movie screen, your Jumbotron, Blade Runner of like what Shanghai or Qingdao would look like at night. It was screenified everything, right? We've allowed technology and story of screen to become part of our brain chemistry. The next step in the screen is the simulation screen, is that the screen is no longer an awareness point of, oh yeah, that's still a screen. We won't know that it's still a screen, and that's the next wave, which again is very challenging from an ethics standpoint. It's actually not challenging at all from a technology standpoint. We know that's happening. It's going to happen. It is happening. It's just the ethics and the choices that we make as humans as to how much we are willing to let the screen take over our complete humanity is the next sort of interesting thing to discuss. Like, the smartest minds in the world will say, you sure you want to do that all day long? Like, be ready, because you can't go back. Once you've got it, you're not probably going to go back to this reality, which may be okay.
So
I'm not making a value judgment. It may be okay.
Yes. So the year we did the first alternate reality game, the guy who thought of it is a guy named Jordan Weissman, and he mentioned that year was the first year that video game sales went down in Japan. And I said, why did video game sales go down? And he said they were outcompeted by a superior entertainment technology. And I said, what is this entertainment technology? And he said, cell phones, because you can't make anything more compelling for a teenager than another teenager. As long as we're living in these bodies, like, I have played video games, and I have really wanted to be kissed by a girl, and they are different things, and one is more compelling.
But in the simulation universe, they will blend together. So
if it's sufficiently simulated, that will be weird.
That will be weird and potentially extraordinarily powerful, maybe too powerful. The idea that we can live inside all of those game dynamics with all those endorphin rushes and have physical relationships with digital bodies or digital simulations. It's already happening. Like, this isn't science fiction. This is a real thing. This is happening now.
Generally in this conversation, I play the role of the optimist. I will also say I didn't play any video games from 1987 to 2015 because I thought I was the sort of person who, if he started, would never stop.
Yeah, you get
so obviously, I may talk an optimistic game, but I've been very careful myself.
So maybe a brief answer to our last question. And so, what do you think? Do you still think we have this potential of extinction of humankind and all these art forms, the traditional art forms, in the face of this development of immersive storytelling?
I think that I heard that question in two phases. The first was, do we still have the possibility of the extinction of mankind? Which I hope not, but as a wise man once said, failure is always an option, whatever they say in the movies. I don't think that immersive storytelling will destroy all other forms of storytelling, and the reason I know this is that my mother-in-law still goes to the opera. I come from the culture of the book. I published a lot of books. Books were the dominant art form of the 19th century. They're still around. They're not dominant, but they're still here. I do think immersive storytelling will rise and become more and more important. I don't think it will completely destroy other things. It just will take market share. That's my...
Hopefully
Yeah.
so.
I think maybe I would answer it this way. I think that there's a very strong possibility of our humankind's extinction at some point in this long-term curve. I think it's more likely than not likely. But I think that it will more than likely happen from a slightly unexpected place rather than expected place. So like we talk about nuclear proliferation. We talk about the technological capability now that we have the technology to literally make our planet, or the humans on our planet, go away. We know this, right? But I think that's less likely than a slightly more esoteric situation that this may be the stuff that actually ends up destroying the human race. So there's some interesting articles you can read now about the amount of plastic. We only recycle about 6 to 7% of all plastic on planet Earth today that's made. So the rest of it lives in landfills and eventually finds its way in some degree of decay back into the ocean, a massive amount. And there's some interesting things that I've been reading that there is now more plasticity in the ocean in various stages of decay than life in the ocean, than fish in the ocean. So all of the fish, all of the food product that our humans need to consume are now being toxified by some degree of plastic. And it probably won't happen to us. It probably won't happen to our grandkids or 7, 10 generations. But maybe a few hundred generations from now, the level of toxicity in the food chain will be so severe that we as humans won't actually be able to survive it. And we will go away. And there'll probably be new creatures that will be developed at some point that will be able to survive that toxicity and live amongst it, just like new bacteria sort of gets formed, things form. But it's an interesting thing to postulate as we talk about global warming, we talk about all these sort of near-term problems, but it might be the plastic that we've created as a technological society that to hold things that may end up being the end of all of us. That's an interesting one. That's a good story to write.
That to me is an argument for making more AIs as fast as we can, so there's some echo of ourselves that lives on even when we manage to kill off this one.
Yeah, we are out of time, but we have such a happy conversation. Thank you very much for your enlightening educational talk. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
谢谢大家的这个参与啊，谢谢。